All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of Triad Expeditions. And in this episode, we are going to be talking about the A750 transmission. This is a transmission that is commonly installed in different Toyota vehicles. And I'm going to put a graphic up here just to kind of better demonstrate how many vehicles and years that this transmission has been in service. So as you can see, back in 2003, they started installing this, maybe even prior to that. Installing this transmission in different Toyota trucks, and it has been a successful transmission for them. I've never really heard that many bad things as far as general failures, and obviously they've stuck with it for a while, so that's really a testimony to the reliability of the transmission and the durability of the transmission. But with that being said, there is always things that you can do to make it more reliable. And the fact is that a OEM vehicle is a far cry from the vehicle that we go down the road with. And a lot of you that are watching this video know exactly what I'm talking about. Between tires, steel bumpers, and all the extra weight that you put on your vehicle, the transmission definitely is being expected to do things that it was never expected to be done in the first place. So I'll try to stay on track and just kind of give you some different things to think about, as much information, things that I've recently kind of researched. So I put a post on the FJ Cruiser forums. And on the FJ Cruiser forums, a lot of people were nice enough to comment back and say some of the different things, experiences that they've had with their Toyota transmissions, and specifically the FJ Cruiser. And one of the common themes that I've noticed about the transmission is that folks really did not service their transmissions before 100,000 miles. And the majority of the failures that I've seen listed on there, as far as folks having problems before 100,000 miles, even as early as 90,000 miles, or shortly after that, was folks that did not do any service prior to the 100,000 mark, the factory recommended maintenance. And when they did, they just replaced the fluid. They didn't actually do a flush. And that may have been the smart thing to do because of them waiting that long. I definitely don't want you guys to take any recommendations on my part as far as what you personally do with your transmission, because I do not want to be responsible for that. I am not a technician or an engineer regarding these transmissions. So definitely everything that you take from this, take it with a grain of salt. You're going to want to do your own research and come up with your own conclusions. And hopefully this is helpful to you, or just something to think about. The transmission fluid, in my opinion, it should be replaced before 100,000 miles. I think that is way too long to go. I think you should do a flush, but I think it should be a flush that incorporates a chemical type flush, not just a mechanical flush. Only a chemical flush, I believe, can really get to all the places that it needs to and dissolve the deposits that build up in automatic transmission because of hard use, whether it's towing or just all the extra weight that you put on it, or even off-roading, washboard roads and that type of thing that really puts stresses out the transmission, including the torque converter. And there's a lot of folks that talk about their torque converter failing. So I think you should do it, but I think you should use a product like BG Product Services that uses chemicals to do it. I think you should use also maybe the AMS oil solutions, that they offer a chemical flush that you can add but prior to changing your fluids. So I think you should definitely consider using some of those products and doing it before 100,000 miles. There's a lot of folks that said that their dealership would change it at 100,000 miles but did not want to do a flush. Now, I contribute this to the fact that either they don't have the right equipment to do it effectively, or the shop that they went to didn't have the correct equipment, or their experiences, and a lot of folks' experiences have been that they've had transmission failures after a flush. And I think that's because it's mostly just a mechanical process that's being done, and it breaks loose those particles, but it doesn't effectively remove them. And as soon as the pressure of the transmission fluid decreases, those particles that you've broke loose, and this is just my theory, they don't go anywhere. They just kind of like arteries in your body. Those particles are floating around inside there. They were broke loose because of the mechanical flush type flush, and then they just when the pressure drops and you drain the fluid, it just stays in there. Now with the chemicals, obviously it dissolves them, it makes it actually go into the fluid, and then so when the fluid is removed, that particulate is also removed. Those substances are also removed with the fluid. So just a theory of mine, and I have not had any issues with my transmission thus far. I do have 90,000 miles on it. It has been used hard, and part of the reason why I wanted to show you some of the components that I'm getting ready to show you is because I wish I would have utilized these components a long time ago. It might have actually been one of the modifications that I would have done sooner to the list of modifications to the FJ, knowing what I was doing with it and not waiting as long as I have. So with all that said, let's start with the first modification, and all three of the modifications that I'm going to show you, they all come from Wholesale Automatic Transmissions, which is in Australia. They make components for transmissions that are what they claim is really significant to be able to have your vehicle transmission deal with the modifications that we do to these vehicles. So this is an external transmission oil cooler. It's not made in China. It's significantly bigger than some of the aftermarket transmission coolers that I've seen listed. A lot of folks were offering up that they installed one of these. Those were also the same folks that said that they had quite a bit more longevity on their some up to 200,000 miles with no issues, and that they had put one of these on their vehicle pretty early on, just knowing that keeping that transmission cool was pretty significant. There's the ones that they shown, the kits that they shown, they were about a third smaller. So this is about a third larger. It's a purpose-built kit, meaning that it's built for off-road vehicles. So these folks that do make it in Australia, and then Wholesale Automatics Transmissions, they actually provide you the bracketry. So it's very much a DIY kit. Comes with some great instructions. So it's kind of like an unboxing here to show you what it looks like out of the box. Really good instructions. I think definitely it's a DIY project that you can do. We're going to have a little bit of concern with ours because our vehicle does have a Magnuson Supercharger, and so with that Magnuson Supercharger, the intercooler is in front of the radiator, which takes up most of the real estate, about 2/3 of the real estate of the radiator. And so I'm not sure how this is exactly going to go in there, but I'm sure we're going to figure it out. So that's just a consideration with us, or if you have a supercharger, you're going to definitely want to consider that. We pull a heavy trailer, and I'll get into that here in a little bit with the other components, but it comes with some hose that are wire loomed, some zip ties, and some clamps, and special bracketry, I think, to deal with the condenser of your AC unit. So they really have tried to make it as easy possible for you, especially with the good instructions, and so I definitely recommend that. Alright, so we'll move on to the next component. Alright, so here's the next component that we're going to be looking at. This next component is called the Lockup Manual Control Kit, and this is also made by Wholesale Automatic Transmissions out of Australia. The purpose of this kit is kind of interesting. So the purpose of this kit is to lock up basically a torque converter, and what that will allow you to do is you'll have 100% engine braking. Now you might ask, well, why would I want that? Well, there's a lot of instances where you're going downhill a descent, and where you're just really just on the interstate and going a long distance, and instead of having that torque converter engage and disengage all the time, this is gonna just lock it up and will actually keep it locked up even down to first gear. Now, to have it be able to keep it all the way in first gear, it is required that you have the Nomad valve body, which is what I'm going to show you here in just a second. But it gives you 100% engine braking. It reduces the transmission temperatures because that torque converter is not locking up and disengaging all the time. It will work on your transmission will work better on corrugated roads, towing, and steep downhill descents. So just like some of you may realize that drive big trucks, like a Jake brake where the engine is a brake, this is sort of what that's going to do. Much different system, but it is sort of the same idea to where you're brakes are not constantly working, especially when pulling a trailer down a long hill. We travel through the Smoky Mountains all the time, and then also out west. And there's a lot of times that you just know that high percentage downhill ascent is just going to really work your brakes, and they're going to get hot. This is going to allow you to just cruise down those mountain hills with a lot less wear on your brakes as you go down those. And a lot of folks would probably think that since now that your engine's working, or it's actually going to stay cooler, and especially your transmission cooler, because that torque converter is not locking up all the time and disengaging all the time. So it's going to give you a longer life expectancy of your lockup plate is what it's going to do. So a little bit beyond my knowledge and scope, but that is the really good thing about this. So the way that it engages and disengages is there's a switch that will be mounted, and you'll just basically push it in or push it out to engage the lockup module or disengage it. So pretty easy. Give you a nice wiring diagram that works in this module, and this works along with your normal computer system in your vehicle. Some indicator LEDs there at the bottom, and this is made in Australia also, and it has the automatic transmission lockup control kit label right there on the back. So, all right, move on to the next kit. All right, so here's the next component that we're going to be installing. And this one is the heavy-duty Nomad valve body, also made by Wholesale Automatic Transmissions and made in Australia. This is a OEM valve body in this package, and they do some milling and modification of the parts, different springs, and that type of thing. This is a DIY kit. This is something that they say that you can do if you're familiar with this type of maintenance and have some good knowledge of mechanical workings. The instructions are pretty good, pretty simple. You can do this underneath your vehicle. The transmission does not have to be removed. You will have to transfer over some solenoids and keep track of where those are. There's some really good videos on the internet that give you an idea of how to replace the A750 valve body. So it really does work you through the process. You'll have to get some special grease to hold the components in place because gravity will be working against you. So you'll make sure to want to get that. And I don't really want to go into the install process too much because I don't want to be responsible for anything that you might do or do wrong. So we'll just keep it at that, but definitely follow the instructions. And if I hadn't mentioned already, all these components can be purchased through Cruiser Brothers. They are the exclusive distributors of the Wholesale Automatic Transmissions to the United States. So that is how you're going to want to get a hold of them. They do include instructions about how to get your original valve body back to them for a refund. There is a core charge for the valve body. Once they determine that your valve body is in good working order, they'll process that refund. So these are some of the instructions. Pretty simple, pretty basic, black and white instructions. Does have pictures though, so that's good. And just walks you through the process. I definitely recommend that you buy the different tools and stuff that you need, and definitely feel go through the process before you actually begin the project. The one cool thing is they do send you a quality assurance sheet where they actually show that they went through the dyno process to make sure that the valve body actually functions correctly, so that it will be more reliable for your installation. And these folks have been doing this for a very long time. There's a lot of good videos. Most of them made by the owner of Wholesale Automatic Transmissions. Rocket is his nickname, and go on there, and he's quite the character, so definitely go on there and check out his videos. They're very entertaining. So they do give you another filter, so that's nice that they include the filter for you, and they do include a cork gasket for the transmission pan, so that's also very handy. So really, without very many tools and additional materials, some good quality Toyota purpose automatic transmission fluid, you're in business to be able to do this. Okay, so let's talk about the benefits and why you'd want to go to the trouble of putting in one of these aftermarket valve bodies. And like I said, there's a lot of these things that I wish I would have done a long time ago, because I know that I would have benefited from them and really just probably prolong the life of my transmission by doing them sooner. But I don't think it's ever too late to do them. That's just my opinion. So at 90,000 miles, we are going to be doing these modifications this week. I'd never heard them before, and that's also one of the motivation for me to do this video, is the fact that I'd never heard of any of these modifications before and was not familiar with them. So what this is going to do is it will help prevent overheating. I eventually do want to install a temp gauge, a manual or a digital temp gauge that's always up and visible in my sight. So just as it is extremely important to keep an eye on the temperature of your vehicle, I want to be able to keep an eye on the temperature of my transmission as I go down the road. But the significance of this valve body is because of more fluid flow, it is going to reduce the temperature and prevent overheating. It improves fuel mileage. It will improve engine braking on steep downhill descents. It will give the engine a 15% natural engine braking feature, which is awful nice. So, with towing those trailers, even though they have electric brakes, now the engine will actually do a better job off throttle of slowing the vehicle down and your trailer down. Greater and cooler flow capacity, greater flow to the lubrication points of the transmission, better off-road and durability capability. So it's definitely going to handle better on off-road. It's going to make up for a lot of the things that the OEM transmission was never really intended to do that we do with our vehicles. More clamping pressure to the clutches and a crisp, neat shift. The features of the transmission are going to be more of what they should be for what you're doing with them, and not so much as far as comfort for somebody that's getting in a brand new vehicle and that's going to just drive the vehicle back and forth to their daily commute. So it's going to give you a more of a truck type shift, more utility type shift. Reduce slippage and over revving on acceleration. That's, once again, the behavior of the transmission is not going to be so much for comfort but for durability. And better torque converter lockup, and great for towing. And then, as I mentioned earlier with the lockup module, to be able to have the lockup module work all the way down, all the way into first gear. So if you're going slow down a downhill ascent, maybe even not quite like rock crawling, but it's just a very much a trail that is going down a mountainside, maybe some switchbacks or something that you're just crawling along. With the Nomad installed, that lockup module will work all the way down into first gear. So if you're really not traveling that fast, your vehicle will most likely be in first gear, and so that lockup module will continue to work in that gear. This is the end of part 1. In part 2, we'll be showing the installed components and talking about how the installation process went and some things to consider when installing these products, and basically the lessons learned. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you can be notified when part 2 is released.